Hi, well, my name is Tanya and welcome to my channel. Now today there won't be any cute introduction or anything just because I don't feel it appropriate for the subject that I'm going to talk to you about. I have had 3 consecutive miscarriages, which technically makes me a recurrent miscarriage case. And I wanted to talk about it because I feel like we don't talk about miscarriage enough, and it is way more common than we actually think. And I think that all the feelings that come with having had a miscarriage are not really, they're not good feelings, and it's not nice to go through it alone or to feel like you're alone, like you're the only one that has ever gone through this. So I'm going to start way at the beginning just so you know a little bit of my background health-wise. Back in 2011, I'd say, I went to my gynecologist, and mind you, ever since I got my period, I have been always very irregular. I would get my period this month, and then I would go 3 months without it, and then I would get it again. And the period, or the cramps, were really, they weren't too bad, but they were severe. And so 1 month I got my period twice in 1 month. So that's when I was like, okay, this is definitely not right. So I went to the doctor, and she told me that I had polycystic ovarian syndrome, I believe it's called. And mind you, I do live in Mexico, so everything, like all the terminology and everything, is in Spanish, and I'm trying my best to translate it for you. But basically what it means is that normally your ovaries, they take one of the follicles and they mature it, and they release it into your uterus, and either it is fertilized and you're pregnant, or you are not and you have your period. And basically what my body does is that my ovaries, they mature a bunch of follicles at the same time, but they don't do it enough so that none of them get released. So basically I don't ovulate correctly, and that is why I am so irregular. And so she prescribed some birth control. So I took birth control for like 3 years, and in that time I met my husband, or well, my boyfriend at the time, and after those 3 years we decided to get married. And we knew from the start that as soon as we got married we wanted to start trying to have a family. So we went to the doctor, and I explained to him my problem, and I just didn't know if I could just stop taking my birth control or if I had to have like some weaning off process or something. So I just kind of, I told him, and he said, no, let's check you out. He checked my ovaries, and they seemed like picture perfect. They were the right size. They were only maturing 1 follicle. Like it was good. And he said, you can just stop taking them, and you can start trying this month. And we did. And at the end of that cycle, I didn't get my period, so I thought I was pregnant, but I took a test and it was negative. I went back to see the doctor, and all of my cysts were back, all of them. So he said, nope, you're gonna have to go on treatment to make you ovulate and to control all your hormone levels so that you only mature 1 of the follicles and you increase your chance of getting pregnant. So I said, okay, and we tried for like 6 months, and I didn't get pregnant. So that's when I realized that I was going to have a much bigger fertility problem than I thought, and I wasn't all that scared, just because I thought, okay, there's medication, like there's a way. Like I was always very positive, and so was my husband. So by that time we had switched doctors, just because that doctor was really far away from where I live, and we looked for one that was that had a lot of more credentials, more recommendations on fertility problems and things like that. So we went to him, and he said, yep, like what the doctor said was good. I'm just gonna up the dose of your medication, of the treatment, so that we can get like a better result. And we did. We tried that for like 2 months, and then I was pregnant. And we found that out on January of 2014, and we were ecstatic. Like, to say the least. We were so excited. Like, I just can't even describe to you, like, happiness does not even cut it. Like, we were so excited. And we went to the doctor as soon as we found out. He did a scan, an ultrasound, and he was like, well, because like the date of your last period, you're supposed to be like 6 weeks along, but I'm measuring your embryo and it measures to like 3 or 4 weeks. He said, I'm not too worried because of your problem and everything. We don't really know when you ovulated. So it very well could be that you're 3 weeks pregnant instead of the 6 that you should be. So I want to see you in 2 weeks, start taking your prenatals, all that stuff. And it never crossed my mind that something could be wrong on that, like at that moment. I never, ever imagined it. So we went back home and we were so excited. Your mind completely, when you're actually trying to conceive and you're actually planning a baby, knowing that you're pregnant, it changes your life. I mean, it normally changes your life, but when you're trying and you're planning this baby, it kind of just clicks. Like everything just seems so perfect, and we started to get ahead of ourselves because we were thinking, well, if it's a girl, like what names do you like? If it's a boy, like we would go to the store and look at baby stuff. Like we were so excited. I remember I started this journal and I took like weekly photos. I was documenting everything just because I knew like I wanted this for so long. So anyway, 2 weeks go by and we go back to the doctor and he said, well, your baby did grow, but it didn't grow as much as it should have. So I want to see you in a week. And again, I didn't think anything was wrong. I didn't think anything of it. He didn't say that something could be wrong. He didn't warn us at all. And so we went back home. We were still fine. I was still journaling and taking pictures, and I was just Googling everything. I was super excited. And that weekend, we decided to tell our immediate family. Like I told everybody, like I videotaped their reactions. We told our closest friends, and everybody was just so excited. Then that appointment came, and mind you, I didn't have any symptoms. I was cramping, but I had asked the doctor and he said it was fine. He said your uterus is growing, so the round ligaments that kind of hold your uterus in place and in their shape, they're tearing and they're breaking, so it's painful. And that's basically all the symptoms I had. I mean, I was still nauseous. I was still having all the pregnancy normal symptoms. So and miscarriage, it never crosses your mind. Especially like no one in my family has ever had a miscarriage, ever. Or fertility problems. So I never thought it was going to be my case. I never saw it coming. And so we go back to the doctor and he looks at the embryo and he said, well, instead of growing, it actually decreased its size. So the pregnancy is no longer viable. And when he said that, I don't remember anything else. My mind was just completely blank. I was extremely sad, obviously, but it was just more of like the shock of it all, like not thinking that it could be possible. Like, why me? Like this is not happening to me. Like, why? And he obviously like went on to explain to us like miscarriage is a lot more common than you think. We don't really know what happened. There's nothing that you could have done to prevent this. Like, there's nothing that you could have done better. It's not your fault. He said a bunch of stuff, but obviously at that moment you don't really care for anything. All I wanted to do was just go home. And so we left the hospital, and all the way home I didn't say anything. And I remember my husband, he was like say something, talk to me, and I just couldn't. I felt like if I started talking, I would just start bawling, and I didn't want to do that right now, like right that moment. So we got home, and as soon as we got home, like as soon as I crossed the doorway, I was like, I lost it. I started bawling, and I can't even describe to you. Like, I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried, and the doctor, he had told me that I had to have a DNC, I believe it's called. It's basically a procedure that they go in through your cervix and they take their instruments and stuff and they clean your uterus out. and I had to have that procedure done the next morning. And so all that night I cried, and obviously my family, they knew that I had a doctor's appointment. So my mom and my grandma, they kept calling me to see, they were really excited. They just wanted to see how everything went and stuff like that. And I couldn't answer the phone. Like I couldn't bring myself to do that. So I told my husband, I was like, you need to do this for me. And he was such a trooper. He picked up the phone and he told, like, he was in charge of telling everybody what had happened. And so obviously I didn't want to talk to anybody. Everybody was devastated for us and very supportive, but I just couldn't face anybody. I just wanted to be alone. And so that night was horrible. And the next morning I woke up super early, and we had to go to the hospital. And that experience in itself was pretty traumatic, just because the hospital that we went to, they have this delivery room, and I think this is true for most of the hospitals in Mexico, but they have this delivery room where they put a bunch of women who are in labor waiting to have their babies. So basically they have a bunch of beds, and they just separate you with these little curtains. When I got there, I was the only one, so my husband was there with me for a little while. But then a mother came in, like she was gonna have her baby, so they kicked my husband out and they left me alone. They put her in the bed next to me, and she had all these things hooked up to her, and she was really excited, obviously really nervous, but she was excited, waiting to have her baby, and I was sitting there waiting to have mine taken away from me. And it was, I don't know, it was just like the worst paradox that I could ever imagine myself being in, and it was horrible. So the doctor took forever to get there, and this whole time I had just been bawling and crying. And finally they put me in the expulsion room. That this is what it's called. It's basically when you're ready to go into active labor and just have your baby. They put you in this little tiny room where the doctor is, or if you're gonna have a C-section. It's basically in that same delivery room. It's just like a little closed off area. They take me there, and I see the anesthesiologist. He comes and he does his thing. I'm put under, and when I wake up, it's done. I didn't feel a thing. It wasn't painful. They put me in this recovery room where my husband was at the time. I was in and out of it a little bit until I was finally conscious enough to get up and get dressed, and I was discharged. That was it. I went home and I cried some more, obviously, and I was like that for about a week. After that, it was like a regular period. I had cramps and I bled for like 10 days, and I'm sorry if this is TMI, but that was it. And I went back to the doctor and I asked him, when can we start trying again? Obviously knowing and having a taste of that happiness, like I want it again, and I want to be pregnant again, and I want to be excited and expecting my baby, and he said, well, you have to let your body heal for a little bit. I'd say about 4 months. So we waited 4 months, and we tried again. We went back on that treatment. We tried again for a few months, and I got pregnant again. And obviously I wasn't, like, we weren't as excited this time. We were still very cautious and very scared and very fearful that it would end up the same way. And so we went to the doctor, and he checked me, and he said, yep, you're pregnant. Start taking your prenatals. You're gonna go on these medications and everything, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. And this time we didn't tell anybody. We just kept it to ourselves. We went back to our 2-week appointment, and sure enough, the embryo was smaller than it had to be, and he uttered the words again of this pregnancy is no longer viable. And this was a lot earlier, I guess, because I didn't need that procedure. I just kind of had to let my body pass it on its own. And obviously that experience, I don't think was as traumatic as the first one, just because I kind of knew that it was over, and that I kind of didn't let myself get too excited, so I wasn't too let down. Obviously it's still super sad, and it's obviously such a disappointment, and I can't even express to you enough how much a sense of guilt comes over you. There's absolutely nothing that I could have done better. I couldn't have taken care, like I couldn't have taken better care of my body, of my baby. It just happens, and I know, like I've been through it, and I know that everything, like all the logic is kind of thrown out the window, and you can't think of anything else except it was my fault. Like there's something, my body wasn't good enough for my baby, like I wasn't good enough for my baby. And that's something that I don't think ever goes away. You kind of always have it with you, but I assure you it does get better. And when this happened, I kind of just let my body pass it on its own, and it was like a regular period. I had cramps and I bled, obviously. I had some blood clots, and that was it. But by this moment, I wanted a second opinion, because this doctor had not ordered a single lab test done, like anything. And I wanted to know what was wrong. Like, how can I prevent this? Like, is there something that I can be taking, like some medication? Is there something that I should be doing with my body? Like, should I get something surgically done to prevent this? Like, what is wrong with me? And the doctor, he didn't order anything. He didn't say anything. So I was like, no, like I need a second opinion. I need another doctor. And by this time, one of my friends at work, she had gone to this doctor, and he was super nice. He treated her super well, and he was also very specialized in infertility. So she recommended him, and I was like, well, we should try it. So I talked it over with my husband, and we decided that it would be best if we just tried and saw if, a different doctor would make a difference. And we went to this doctor, and as soon as I told him everything that had happened, he was like, and you haven't had any tests done or anything? And I said, no, like he didn't order anything. And he said, okay, well, you need to go have these done. And I did. The frustrating thing is that everything came back normal. Like, they tested my hormone levels and my thyroid, and if I had some like issues with my blood, if it was too thick or too thin, and everything came back normal. They checked for STDs, and everything just seemed right, So the doctor was like, okay, well, you need to keep trying, and we're gonna have you on treatment and things to make this as viable and as possible as we can make it. So I went on the treatment again, and I got pregnant, and this was just January of this year. I got pregnant again, and sure enough, same thing happened. I went to the appointment, and it didn't measure correctly to the weeks that it should be, but because again, we didn't know when I actually ovulated, the doctor couldn't really say that it was wrong. So I went back in a few weeks, and it was already not there, And so I asked him, I said, like, what can we do differently? Like, what can I do? And he said, there's nothing that you can do differently. You have to keep trying. And this time when my body passed it, it was a lot more painful. I bled for so many more days that I told my husband, I said, we're done. Like, I don't want to keep trying. And, my body needs a break. Like, it's so mentally draining and physically draining that I just didn't want to go through it anymore, And my husband was very supportive, and he said, okay, we'll let it rest for at least a year, and then we can try again. And we did. I completely, I was not on any treatment. I was getting my irregular periods as usual. And then one day, I found out I was pregnant again. Randomly, with no treatment at all. And I am currently 14 weeks pregnant, and everything seems to be going perfectly. And I just don't know what we did right this time, And basically, the overall kind of meaning of me telling this story is that if you are experiencing miscarriages or recurrent miscarriages, know that there is still something that can happen that's right, I honestly had lost hope. I thought that I wasn't ever going to be able to be a mom, and obviously I'm still very fearful because I know that this could be taken away from me in a split second. You know, I'm still worried, and I'm still, you know, carrying that like anxiety with me always. But you know, there is still hope, and I never thought it would be possible for me, but it is. Something that we did differently, I mean, obviously we weren't on any medication, like I wasn't on any treatment, so my body did it naturally, which is basically a miracle, but it did. As soon as we found out I was pregnant, when I found out I was pregnant, I was 6 weeks along, and the doctor prescribed, like every morning I take a baby aspirin, which is basically a blood thinner. I take progesterone. I take that twice a day, and I also take prednisone twice a day. I take my prenatals once a day, and that's it. That's 4 medications I take every day. And I've been on that since the day I found out, and I haven't taken them ever since. I have been super relaxed. I have been eating right and not thinking, like trying not to think too much about it because I don't want to stress myself out. But basically that's it, and we're obviously super grateful, and we're super excited. And I want to let people know that, like, if anything, I want to know that you're not alone. You know, that I've been through it, that there's a lot of women who've been through this, and I think that we should be talking about miscarriage a lot more. I think that there is still some kind of like taboo around the subject. And I get it, you know, when you go through it, you feel all this guilt and anxiety that you almost don't want to tell anybody else. Like, you feel like it's something that you should be carrying with you, and that you should be kind of experiencing and just like grieving on your own. But it is not true. You're doing everything that you can, and that is enough. You know, like if you're taking care of your body and you're trying your best to eat right, and you're taking your prenatals and things like that, and it still happens, like, don't beat yourself up for it. And I understand, like, I get it that it's such an awful feeling, and it's such a devastating thing to go through. But you know, if anything, you know, take this and know that you still can get pregnant, and that you can still go on and have a normal, healthy pregnancy. So I will be talking in another video about how we found out we were pregnant and the experience that it has been through this journey, you know. But for now, I just want to leave this video just saying, if you need to talk to anybody, if you need to know like what I did or what I went through, like, you can message me, you can contact me, you can write something on the comments below, and I will make sure to answer you as best as I can. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, I'm not anything related, but I have been through three miscarriages, and I can tell you my experience. So thank you for watching and for staying this long, and I guess we'll see you in another video. Bye.